understand what REST API is. If you don't, please look at the internet. This is going to be just a quick summary. So a REST API basically has a verb. It could be get, post, put, patch, delete. So we use post, and we'll post it to a URL, api.example.com, as you can see, and we'll post it to this address right here. Member, here's the member number, cart. And as you can see, the protocol here is 1.1 for HTTP. Now we can pass some headers, such as host, authorization, which gives a username and password, the content type, which is application JSON, and maybe some acceptance headers. We'll pass in that JSON data. We'll have two fields, inventory ID and quantity. As you can see, this is plain text. And then the server, after processing that request, will respond something. For example, HTTP 1.1 status is 201 created. We'll give you some headers such as date, the content type, and the location of where it was created. So this is a quick example, a quick refresher what a REST API works, what it is and how it works. But this is what you would see on the internet for REST APIs. Now, let's look at the difference of gRPC versus REST. gRPC will use protocol buffers. As we can see before, it's smaller, it's faster, while REST will use JSON, which is text-based, not binary. It's slower and it's a bigger size, okay? So we already seen this. It's a clear advantage for gRPC, at least on the communication side and the performance side, to use protocol buffers. It will be less easy when you start debugging, obviously. Now, HTTP 2 is used by gRPC, which is much lower latency, as we've seen in the whole HTTP 2 section, and it's from 2015. REST, all around the internet, as far as I know, for now uses HTTP 1.1, which has a much higher latency and is from 1997. Now, REST only allows client to server requests only, as we've seen, whereas gRPC, as we've seen in the 4 types of APIs, allows bidirectional and asynchronous APIs, so you have much more flexibility using gRPC. Now, REST only allows request response, while gRPC has some streaming capabilities. REST, if you perfectly implement REST, and many people do not implement REST at all or perfectly, they call REST-ish API, not RESTful API. Basically, REST is called CRUD oriented. CRUD means create, retrieve, update, delete. And the verbs will be post, get, put, delete. So REST is CRUD oriented. You will have resources, for example, users, and you say create a user, retrieve a user, update a user, or delete a user. But it doesn't really focus on what is happening, okay? You just deal with resources. Whereas gRPC is oriented around the what. Your API have no constraints. It's a free design for you, and you can really focus on what the API should be doing. What is the perfect endpoint? What are the perfect parameters for your API, okay? So REST is resource-oriented, whereas gRPC is API-oriented. And once you get this, maybe you'll get that revelation across the course that will really show you how to make gRPC so powerful. Now, REST has no code generation, or it's available through something called OpenAPI or Swagger, which are both add-on, they're not part of the specification. So they're what's called second-class citizen. And the Swagger OpenAPI initiative is quite recent as well. So you can do some code generation using OpenAPI or Swagger. Whereas gRPC is built from the ground up, and it's used protocol buffers to define the service and the message in the API. Therefore, code generation is done through protocol buffers, and it's a first-class citizen. You cannot use gRPC without doing code generation, which in itself makes gRPC super safe. So it's a very important distinction. Finally, REST is going to be HTTP verbs based. So you'll have to write the plumbing or use a third-party library around doing post, get, put, deletes, and so on. Whereas gRPC is RPC based. That means that we can call functions directly on the server, okay, as we've seen before. The clients will basically call a function on the server, and gRPC does all the plumbing for us out of the box. So there is an amazing benchmark that's been done by this guy at this address, and you can just look at it. But he's done some benchmark and find that for the same API, that gRPC will be 25 times more performant than REST APIs. And his defined performance has the time it takes to have a response for an API. And that's all due to these differences and all these technology improvements. So overall, if you're looking for a very high performance scalable API, gRPC is going to be the one, not REST. Okay? So I hope that helps. I will see you in the next lecture. Take a step back and summarize why we want to use gRPC and what it is before we go into the implementation. So gRPC will be amazing to use because using protocol buffers, you will have easy code definition and generation in 11 languages. It will use a modern, low latency HTTP2 transport mechanism out of the box. SSL security will be built in. You'll have support for streaming APIs for maximum performance if you need it. And gRPC will be API oriented, which is really easy to reason about instead of the resource oriented frameworks like REST. So hope you're excited. Now this is all about it for gRPC theory. In the next sections, we'll go straight into the hands-on and start implementing our first gRPC APIs.